At precisely 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday, the HOA president of Maple Ridge stood on my front lawn, megaphone in hand, demanding a community tribunal to vote on whether my pregnant wife's sidewalk chalk art constituted a felony defacement of public property. Somewhere behind her, 2 other board members were roping off our driveway with yellow caution tape labeled HOA crime scene. A neighbor's child cried. Someone called the local news. And me? I just sipped my tea and smiled like a man with a secret. My name is Thomas Sullivan, and I'm a mild-mannered software engineer who moved to Maple Ridge for its quiet streets and fiber internet. My wife Emma and I were expecting our first child and had just started nesting. We painted the nursery in soft pink hues, bought baby books, and Emma had drawn a chalk welcome message on our sidewalk that read, "Come soon, baby Sullivan," with a little heart. It was innocent. It was beautiful. It was, apparently, a capital offense in the eyes of our HOA president. Enter Barbara Morrison, the HOA president. She was a retired tax auditor with a clipboard fetish and a god complex. She lived 3 doors down and walked around with a laminated copy of the community bylaws, ready to strike at any moment. Barbara had already fined me $50 for wind chime decibel violations, and accused my lawn gnome of being satanic adjacent. The woman measured grass height with a ruler and once called 911 because my recycling bin was facing the wrong direction. When Emma drew those pastel flowers and wrote, "It's a girl," in pink chalk in front of our walkway, Barbara nearly combusted. I watched from our living room window as she took photos from every angle, her face growing redder with each snap. She knocked on doors to gather witnesses, clipboard in hand, asking neighbors if they felt threatened by the unauthorized artwork. Most people just looked confused and closed their doors. The next day, Barbara filed a formal complaint citing vandalism, unapproved art, and something she called estrogenic disturbance of neighborhood neutrality. I'm still not sure what that last one meant, but she underlined it 3 times on the violation notice she taped to our door. The fine was $200, due within 72 hours, or she threatened to escalate to legal proceedings. That's when the surveillance started. Barbara installed a Ring camera on her property, pointed directly at ours. She sat behind her hydrangeas with binoculars, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Emma couldn't water the plants without Barbara documenting it. I caught her measuring the exact placement of our trash cans and photographing our mailbox from multiple angles. She distributed flyers throughout the neighborhood, warning of graffiti escalation and the breakdown of property values. The flyer featured a blurry photo of Emma's chalk flowers next to a stock image of gang tags on a building. At the bottom, in bold letters, it read, "Your children are not safe." Barbara tried to petition for our removal from the HOA entirely. She gathered signatures at the community pool, telling people we were anarchists who would destroy the neighborhood's integrity. Most people refused to sign, but she managed to get 3 names, all from her book club friends. At one point, she even suggested that our baby's name should be pre-approved by the HOA board to ensure it met community standards. She said certain names could attract undesirable elements to the neighborhood. When Emma laughed at this, Barbara wrote down "excessive noise complaint" in her notebook. Things escalated when Barbara called an emergency HOA meeting. She rented a projector and created a 40-slide PowerPoint presentation titled, "The Sullivan Threat, a Clear and Present Danger to Maple Ridge." The slides included zoomed-in photos of the chalk art, quotes from the community bylaws highlighted in red, and a graph showing projected property value decline if artistic expression was allowed to continue unchecked. But Barbara made a crucial mistake. She attempted to contact the county prosecutor, claiming Emma and I were domestic extremists defacing federal sidewalks. She sent emails with subject lines like "urgent," "terrorist activity in Maple Ridge," and demanded immediate action. The prosecutor's office forwarded her emails to local law enforcement, but not for the reason Barbara hoped. When that didn't get the response she wanted, Barbara edited security camera footage to make it look like Emma had menaced her with a stroller. She sent this doctored video to the police department with a lengthy statement about fearing for her life. She claimed Emma had weaponized pregnancy hormones and was using them to terrorize law-abiding citizens. Unfortunately for Barbara, the police had already been investigating her. A retired Marine named Frank Peterson, who lived on the next street, had filed a harassment suit 6 months earlier. Barbara had tried to get him evicted for flying an American flag that she claimed was too large. 3 other neighbors had also filed complaints. Barbara Morrison was already on their radar, and not in a good way. The police reviewed Barbara's edited video and compared it to the original footage from other neighbors' cameras. They could clearly see the manipulation. Instead of arresting Emma, they opened an investigation into Barbara for filing false police reports and harassment. At the next HOA meeting, I walked in wearing my best suit. The room was packed with residents who had heard about Barbara's latest stunts. She sat at the board table, gavel in hand, ready to present her case against us. But I had other plans. I stood up and calmly introduced myself. Good evening. I'm Thomas Sullivan, and some of you may not know that I serve as special counsel for municipal code compliance. The room went quiet. Barbara's grip on her gavel tightened. It's a role I've held quietly for 6 years while working on a federal task force that writes housing bylaws across the state. I pulled out a thick folder and began distributing copies of violation notices. But these weren't for me or Emma. They were for Barbara Morrison. I had done my homework, and what I found was shocking, even to me, I said. Mrs. Morrison, I continued, maintaining eye contact, your backyard shed exceeds zoning limits by 4 square feet. That's a $1,000 fine. Her face went pale. Your deck was built without proper permits. That's another $1,500. I flipped to the next page. Your historically inspired mailbox violates fire safety codes due to its proximity to the street. $500. But I wasn't done. You've been using HOA funds to purchase surveillance equipment for personal vendettas. That's embezzlement. You filed false police reports. That's a criminal offense. And you've systematically harassed multiple residents, which violates not just HOA bylaws, but state anti-stalking statutes. The room erupted in murmurs. Barbara slammed her gavel repeatedly, shouting about order and decorum, but no one was listening to her anymore. I continued, reading from the bylaws she claimed to know so well, specifically Article 7, Section 4, which forbade malicious governance and abuse of HOA authority. According to these bylaws that you love so much, I said, any board member found guilty of harassment must be immediately removed from their position and banned from holding office for 5 years. I looked around the room at the assembled neighbors. I motioned for an immediate vote of no confidence in Barbara Morrison as HOA president. The vote was unanimous. Every single resident raised their hand in favor of her removal. Even her book club friends voted against her. Barbara's face went from pale to bright red to an alarming shade of purple. She stood up, knocking over her chair, and pointed a shaking finger at me. You can't do this, she screamed, her voice cracking. I am the HOA president. I maintain order. Without me, this neighborhood will descend into chaos. She grabbed her clipboard and held it like a shield. I'll sue every last one of you. I'll call the mayor. I'll call the governor. But her threats fell on deaf ears. Within days, Barbara's Ring camera was removed by court order. Her surveillance notes were subpoenaed as evidence in the criminal case against her. A cease and desist order was delivered for HOA harassment. The judge was particularly unimpressed by her edited video and false police reports. The district attorney's office decided to prosecute Barbara for multiple counts of harassment, filing false police reports, and misuse of HOA funds. Each harassment count carried up to 6 months in jail and a $5,000 fine. The false police report charge could mean up to a year in prison. The embezzlement of HOA funds for personal surveillance equipment added another potential 3 years. At her sentencing hearing, Barbara Morrison stood before the judge, still clutching a copy of the HOA bylaws. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, suspended to probation with 800 hours of community service. She was also ordered to pay $35,000 in fines and restitution to her harassment victims. When the judge read the sentence, Barbara let out a wail and collapsed into her attorney's arms, sobbing about the death of democracy in Maple Ridge.